He said she didn't belong in that company, didn't have the look, the polish, said she didn't have the grit for real estate. Funny how they call it grit when a man steps out for his kids' game, but irresponsibility when a mother leaves early to save her child from a meltdown. But what that man didn't know is that she'd been opening doors her whole life, doors that were locked, rusted, and slammed shut in her face. Her name was Renee Collins, a mother, a fighter, a licensed real estate agent in Houston, and a woman who had learned to carry the weight of 2 lives on 1 paycheck. Her daughter Ava was 10, diagnosed on the autism spectrum at 3, bright eyes, sensitive to sound, needed structure like lungs need air, the kind of girl who didn't speak much, but when she did, she broke you clean in half with sweetness. Every Tuesday at 3:45, Ava had therapy, occupational, sensory, behavior, sometimes all 3, and Renee never missed one, not once, even if it meant she had to leave the office at 3:15 sharp. At first, her boss pretended to understand, said all the right things. Family comes first, he smiled. We support strong mums here, but smiles don't pay rent, and support is cheap when it's printed on a poster in the break room. By the 3rd week, the tone changed. The sarcasm crept in like mold behind fresh paint. Heading out early again? He'd ask. Must be nice. Sometimes in front of the team. Sometimes just loud enough for her to hear. He was the kind of man who liked to keep people unsure. Smiling in the meeting, scolding in private. Not personal, he'd say. Just business. But it felt personal. Every single time. The office was sleek. Glass walls, cold light, quiet competition dressed in soft tones and hard shoes, and there was Renee, always a little flushed from the rush of getting Ava to school, slightly overdressed to make up for the tired eyes, her blazer a size too big, bought second-hand but ironed with care, her phone always on silent but always close. Every deal she closed, she fought for, every client she kept, was a small miracle, but it never felt like enough. Not when she had to leave at 3:15, not when she walked past the conference room mid-meeting and saw the glances, not when her boss made sure everyone knew she wasn't available after hours. And then came the Friday that broke her. Ava had a sensory episode at school, screaming, biting her hands. They couldn't calm her down. The school called, said she needed to be picked up immediately. Renee left the office without thinking. No goodbyes, no explanations, just keys, purse, and gone. When she came back Monday, her badge didn't work. She thought it was a glitch, until the security guard handed her a letter, and she read the words. Effective immediately. Unprofessional conduct. Repeated failure to meet scheduling expectations. She stood there, holding that paper, like it was a verdict, like all her efforts, her dignity, had come down to one moment of being a mother, and as people walked by, pretending not to notice, she realized something deeper than pain, something colder than rage. They had expected her to break, and maybe she just did. If you've ever had to work twice as hard just to be seen as half, take a breath, my dear. This story might be closer to yours than you think. His name was Victor Brandt, a man who built his ego off other people's exhaustion. Tall, sharp, always in control. He wore tailored suits like armor and sarcasm like perfume. The kind of boss who shook your hand too long and looked you in the eye just long enough to make you feel small. He ran the real estate firm like a kingdom, and he was the king. And Renee? She was a disposable subject, a mother with divided priorities. A liability in high heels. She walked into that office for the last time, not to beg, but to understand. I gave everything, she said. I was your top agent last quarter. Victor didn't flinch. You left during peak hours, you weren't committed. Renee looked him in the eye. I left to pick up my daughter. He leaned back. Your personal life isn't our responsibility. There it was, cold, final. Like she should have hidden her motherhood in a drawer next to her stapler. She turned to leave. But he added one more thing. That's the difference between you and the others, he said. They want it more. She drove home that day with tears she refused to let fall. Ava was waiting at the window, holding a drawing. Two stick figures holding hands. One tall, one small, a big red heart in the middle. "Mama, I made us." Renee sat on the floor, holding that drawing like a lifeline. No job, no savings, rent overdue, and a child who still needed therapy, routine, love. She applied for unemployment. Denied. She called 5 real estate firms. 4 didn't answer. One said, "You're too much of a risk." She looked in the mirror one night and whispered to herself, "Am I still enough?" But something stirred inside her. Not anger, not revenge, something deeper. She remembered what Ava's therapist once told her. "Mothers like you build muscles no one sees." So Renee stopped applying and started building. She opened a tiny home office, just a laptop and a phone. She printed flyers with borrowed money. She focused on single moms, women like her, clients no one chased. She called herself Keys with Care, and slowly, one call became 2. 2 turned into 4. A nurse, a waitress, a woman with 3 kids, and a Section 8 voucher. Renee didn't just sell homes. She listened. She held babies during walkthroughs. She drove women to closings when their cars broke down. And one day, her phone rang. A voice said, "Victor Brandt, referred by a friend. I need help finding a condo." She froze, but didn't hang up. She smiled and said, "I'd be happy to help." But when he walked into her new office, he didn't recognize her name, didn't remember her face, but she remembered everything. She remembered, and this time she held the keys. He walked in with that same confident stride. Victor Brandt, still polished, still smug, still blind to the trail of broken spirits he'd left behind. The office Renee had built wasn't grand. Just 2 chairs, a desk, a play corner with soft toys and noise-cancelling headphones, Ava's corner. But it smelled like lavender and fresh hope, not ambition, but care. Victor sat down like he owned the place, looked around like he was disappointed. "You work alone?" he asked. Renee nodded. "I do," he smirked. "Must be hard, running everything by yourself." She didn't blink. "Not as hard as watching someone fire you for doing the right thing." He looked up, confused. "I'm sorry, have we met?" She didn't answer right away. Let the silence settle like dust on his expensive watch. He didn't remember her. Of course he didn't. Men like Victor never see the women they step on, only the ones they fear. But she remembered everything. The badge that didn't work, the letter, the way her name got erased from the staff group chat like she never existed. Still, she smiled. "I'm Renee Collins." He blinked, shifted in his seat, tried to place the name. Nothing. She kept her voice steady. "You fired me 3 years ago." Silence. Just the sound of Ava's crayons scratching behind the curtain. He swallowed hard. I didn't realize." She nodded. "I know." There was a long pause. "I need to find something in the Heights. Fast. Divorce just finalized. My ex took the house." He tried to laugh it off. Renee didn't. "I specialize in single mothers," she said. He stiffened. "I'm not a mother." She raised an eyebrow. "No, but now maybe you understand a little more." He stayed quiet, then did the thing men like him do when they lose control. He threw money at it. "I'll pay double your rate." Renee leaned forward. "This isn't about the rate, Mr. Brandt. It's about whether I take you on as a client." His mouth opened, then shut. No one had ever said that to him before, and for the first time, he looked small. "I need this," he said. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. "I'll think about it," Renee replied. And that night, after Ava fell asleep on her chest, she stared at the ceiling and whispered, "God, what are you doing?" Because sometimes power doesn't come when you fight to be seen. It comes when you stop needing permission. And that Monday morning, a letter came in the mail, but this time it wasn't from Victor, and it didn't fire her. It threatened everything she'd built. She stood in the kitchen holding the envelope. The seal was from the Texas Real Estate Commission. Her hand trembled. Renee had been careful, licensed, documented, ethical. She never cut corners, never lied, always put her clients' needs first, even when it cost her time, money, or sleep. But there it was, A formal complaint. Operating without full disclosure. Failure to report a prior termination from a brokerage. She dropped the letter on the counter like it burned. Ava was sitting at the table drawing again. Quiet, focused, safe. Renee stepped outside to cry, but the tears didn't come. Only fire. Who would do this? The paperwork mentioned the complainant's initials, VB. Her chest tightened. Victor. He knew who she was now, and he wanted her out. Again. He couldn't stand that she had built something, that she had survived, that she had the upper hand. She called the commission's number, spoke with a woman named Denise. Denise sounded kind, human, said they had to follow through. It was standard, but her voice softened when she read the file. I can see you've been compliant. But this, it might trigger a full investigation. Full investigation, which meant months of scrutiny, loss of trust, delayed closings, no income. Renee felt the floor shift beneath her. Everything she'd built could collapse, not because she failed, but because a man couldn't bear to lose to a woman he once erased. She sat in silence that night, phone face down, laptop shut. She didn't tell Ava, she just held her. Like a ship holding an anchor, like silence holding a scream. And then, at midnight, her phone buzzed, a text, unknown number. I saw what he did. I know the truth. You're not alone. Attached was a file, a scanned memo, typed, signed, stamped, from 3 years ago. It said, Renee Collins' departure was not based on performance or ethics. It was from HR, from inside Victor's old company, and someone had kept it. The sender, Marta, from accounting. A woman Renee hadn't spoken to in years. One who had once whispered, "You're better than this place," as she walked out the door. And now, she held the piece of truth. Renee needed to fight back. But there was more. Marta had added one line at the bottom. They did it to me too. Renee stared at the screen, at the truth, at the quiet bond of women discarded, but not defeated. Because sometimes, when the world tries to close every door on you, another woman holds it open, just long enough for you to walk through. And that's when Renee decided she wouldn't just defend herself, she'd expose him. Renee printed the memo, held it in her hands like it was holy, not because it was written on expensive paper, but because it told the truth, her truth. Stamped and signed by an HR manager long gone, the document proved her termination was not for misconduct. No ethics violation, no performance issue, just organizational restructuring, corporate language for getting rid of someone they didn't want to understand. She called Marta the next morning. The woman answered on the first ring. Didn't think you'd remember me, Marta said, voice low, tired. I never forgot you, Renee whispered. They talked like survivors, both pushed out, both blamed silently, both told to keep their heads down while men like Victor climbed higher by stepping lower. Marta had left the company 2 months after Renee. I saw the pattern, she said. He didn't just get rid of you. He made sure people believed it was your fault. That's when Renee felt something shift. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the system Victor had built, one where women were seen as distractions and mothers as liabilities. So she did something terrifying. She printed the complaint, the memo, the timeline, and walked them into a lawyer's office. A woman named Tanisha Clark, black, sharp, fierce. Tanisha read every page, didn't blink. This isn't just a complaint, she said. This is retaliation. Renee swallowed. He filed it after walking into my business, after I reminded him who I was. Tanisha nodded. And he wants to destroy you because you didn't break. They filed a counterclaim that afternoon. Formal, legal, loud, no more silence. Victor would be served within 48 hours. That night, Renee told Ava, as gently as she could, there might be some noise, baby. Some grown-up noise, but we're okay. Ava stared for a long time, then picked up a green crayon and drew a house. Big door, wide window. 2 stick figures again, this time both standing on top of a hill. Mama, she said, I drew us safe. Renee smiled, because somehow Her daughter always knew what she needed most. But peace didn't last long. The next morning her office had been broken into, nothing stolen, nothing damaged, except for one thing, the flyer on her front window, the one that read, "We fight for women who've been told to stay quiet." It had been torn in half, and on her desk sat a copy of her own complaint, with a sticky note, "You should have stayed small." No signature, but she didn't need one. She knew exactly who it came from, and instead of fear, she felt something deeper, resolve. Because when you try to silence a mother who's already lost everything, she doesn't back down. She builds louder, but just as she prepared to escalate, her phone rang. Blocked number. She answered. A voice she hadn't heard in years. A man's voice. One she never expected to call. "Renee, it's Darren. I think we need to talk. It's about Ava." She hadn't heard his voice in over 5 years. Darren Fields, Ava's father, the man who vanished when the diagnosis came in, said he wasn't built for special needs, said he'd just get in the way. Renee remembered that day like it was yesterday, how he packed his bags with quiet hands, how he kissed Ava's forehead and told Renee, "You're strong enough for both of us," and then disappeared. No birthday cards, no support. No phone calls when Ava screamed through the night. No check-ins when Renee sat in hospital waiting rooms praying her daughter could just breathe without panic. She raised Ava alone, not by choice, but by courage. So when she heard his voice now, cool and casual like nothing had changed, her heart didn't break, it hardened. "What do you want, Darren?" "I heard about what's happening," he said. "The complaint, the lawyer, Victor." She stood still. "How do you know about that?" Pause. I've been following you, quietly." Renee almost laughed. "I don't need your quiet, I needed your presence." "I know," he said, "and I'm sorry, truly. But this isn't just about you." She frowned. "What are you talking about?" There was a silence on the line that made her skin crawl. "It's about Ava," he said. "What about her?" Another pause. Then, "She's being followed." Her blood ran cold. "I saw a man outside her school, same guy. Twice. Dark SUV, tinted windows." Renee clutched the edge of the table. "You're lying." "I wish I was," he said. "I followed him the second time, took down the plates." "Did you call the police?" "No. I wanted to tell you first." She sat down slowly, mind spinning. Could Victor have gone that far? Was this about intimidation or something darker? "Why now, Darren? Why come back now?" His voice cracked. "Because for the first time, I saw her, really saw her, and I saw you. She's incredible. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." Renee stayed silent, because forgiveness isn't born in words, it's earned in action. He offered to help, to drive Ava, to document everything, and she didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either, because sometimes the people who left come back when the fire gets hot enough, and while Renee wasn't ready to trust him, she knew this fight was bigger than pride, bigger than betrayal. It was about Ava's safety and dignity and truth. So she walked into the police station that night, filed a report, showed them the license plate, the torn flyer, the sticky note, and the HR memo Marta gave her. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She said 5 words with a steady voice. "I want to press charges." But as she turned to leave, the officer said, "Ms. Collins, you should see this." He held up a photo, grainy, zoomed in, security footage, of the man who tore her flyer, and on his wrist was a gold watch, with the initials VB. But he wasn't alone in the photo. Someone else was with him, and that face, Renee knew very well. Renee stared at the photo in the officer's hand. There was Victor, clear as day, wearing the same gold watch he used to flaunt in meetings, the one he always said was a gift to himself after closing $1 million deal. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was someone Renee had trusted, someone who used to bring coffee to her office when she worked overtime, someone who cried with her in the bathroom after the termination letter, someone who once whispered, "You'll land on your feet, you always do." Lena, her former colleague, the only woman at the firm who had once stood by her side, now standing beside Victor in a grainy photo, helping him tear down everything Renee had rebuilt. The officer didn't know the context, didn't know the betrayal behind that image, but Renee felt it like a knife between the ribs. She left the station without saying a word, drove home with Ava asleep in the back seat, and when she walked through the door, she didn't collapse. She sat at the kitchen table, opened her laptop, and started writing. Not a resignation letter, not a complaint, a post on her website, on social media, on every platform her little business touched. She titled it, "What They Do to Women Like Us," and she wrote it all. The truth about being fired for leaving to help her daughter, about Victor, about the complaint, about rebuilding from scratch, and about the moment she realized it wasn't just her. She ended the post with one line, "If this has happened to you too, I see you, I believe you, and I'm not backing down." She hit publish and went to bed, not knowing what would come next. But by sunrise, her phone had 94 missed notifications, 12 voicemails, and over 400 comments. Women from Dallas, Atlanta, Cape Town, Kingston, mothers, nurses, teachers, realtors, all saying the same thing. "Me too." And buried in those comments was one that made her drop the phone. It said, "Renee, I used to work for him. He's done worse. Call me." Attached was a number and a name, Lena. The same Lena from the photo. She dialed the number, hands shaking, heart pounding with a mix of rage, hope, and something she couldn't name. The phone rang once, twice, then, "Renee?" Lena's voice, soft, hesitant, like someone who'd waited too long to speak. "What do you want?" Renee said sharp. Lena didn't flinch. "I want to make it right." Renee took a deep breath. "Why were you with him? Why would you help him?" Lena was quiet. Then she whispered, "Because I was scared." 3 seconds passed. 4. "I knew what he did to you," Lena continued. "I knew it was wrong. But after you were gone, he made it clear if I wanted to keep my job, I had to keep my mouth shut." Renee's voice trembled. "So, you helped him come after me?" "No," Lena said. "I didn't know what he was planning. I thought we were just watching, making sure you weren't breaking the rules." Renee let out a bitter laugh. "Like I was some criminal." "I'm sorry," Lena said, "but I want to help now. I've kept emails, messages, voice recordings." That made Renee pause. "Recordings?" Lena's voice dropped even lower. "He said things about mothers, about women with baggage. I kept them because I knew one day someone would need them." Renee swallowed hard. "Why now?" Lena sighed. "Because of Ava. I saw her with you and I thought, what if that was my child? What if someone tried to destroy her future just because I dared to raise her alone?" There was a long silence between them, not of comfort, but of recognition. Women forced into corners, told to shrink, told to smile, told to stay silent, and now refusing. Renee gave her an address. "Meet me tomorrow. Bring everything." Lena agreed. And when Renee hung up, she sat in Ava's room for a long time, watching her daughter sleep, this little girl who had taught her how to fight without fists, how to speak with love in a world built on cruelty. She brushed Ava's curls back and whispered, "We're gonna finish this, baby, not just for us, but for every woman who never got the chance." But the next morning, Renee arrived at the coffee shop, waited 1 hour, 2, no Lena, no call, no message. And just as she was about to leave, a man in a black jacket walked in, handed her a brown envelope. "From her," he said, then walked out. Inside, a flash drive and a photo of Lena with a black eye and a note that said, "He knows." Renee stared at the flash drive in her hand, tiny thing, light as a feather, but she knew it carried weight that could shake walls. She slid it into her laptop. There were 6 files, all audio, each one labeled by date. The first recording was from over 2 years ago. Victor's voice came through, sharp, laughing. "You hire a mother, you get chaos. You hire a single mother, you get unpaid therapy sessions." Renee clenched her jaw. The next file, more of the same. "I don't care if her kid has seizures, ballet, or a spaceship to catch. If she can't be on time, she doesn't belong here." Each word hit like a slap. The man who smiled in meetings, who handed out compliments like candy to the investors. That same man caught stripping dignity from women when the doors were closed. But the final recording, that one made Renee cover her mouth, because in it, Victor spoke her name. Renee Collins should have been gone sooner. She had that charity case energy. You know the type. Wants everyone to feel sorry for her because her daughter's different. And then she'll pop up again, I'm sure. Women like her always try to build something. That's when you tear it down before they get comfortable. Silence. Then Lena's voice, shaky, almost afraid. What if she reports you? He laughed. She doesn't have the stomach. Renee paused the audio and sat there, still, silent, letting the words float in the air like smoke. He thought she didn't have the stomach. He thought she was weak. She closed the laptop, grabbed her phone, and called Tanisha, her lawyer. "We've got him," Renee said, "on tape." Tanisha asked for the files, said she'd prep an emergency hearing. "Once this hits the right desk," she said, "Victor Brandt won't be able to sell lemonade in this state, much less a luxury condo." But Renee didn't smile, because she was thinking about Lena, about the bruise on her face, the fear in that note. He knows. She called the number again. No answer. She drove by Lena's apartment. Empty. Neighbors said she moved out fast. No details. Renee left her number with a neighbor anyway, just in case. Because even now, after the betrayal, the silence, the danger, she still believed in protecting those who had been broken. But that night, as she got Ava ready for bed, her daughter looked up and asked, "Mama, are you safe?" Renee stopped, kneeled, held her daughter's face in her hands and said, "We are now, because I don't run anymore." But just as she tucked Ava in, her phone rang again. Private number. She answered. A voice, tired, low, familiar. "Marta, from accounting." Renee's heart skipped. "I think you should know," Marta said. "There's an investigation happening inside Victor's old firm. Internal audit. HR got a tip." Renee held her breath. Marta continued. "They're asking questions about him, and they asked for your name." Renee whispered, "Did you tell them?" There was a pause. "I told them everything." And just like that, the man who fired her in silence was about to be called into the light. But when she opened her email, there was one message waiting, from his lawyer, with a subject line that read, "Immediate cease and desist." The email was cold, precise. Exactly what you'd expect from a man who weaponized professionalism like a sword. "Dear Ms. Collins, we represent Mr. Victor Brandt. It has come to our attention that you have published false and defamatory statements regarding our client." Renee read it twice, then a third time. Every sentence a threat dressed in legal jargon. Demanding she take down her post, demanding she destroy the evidence, demanding silence. They threatened court, fees, ruin, all because she told the truth. She forwarded it to Tanisha. Her lawyer replied 2 minutes later. Her message was short. "Stand down for now, we're going bigger." But Renee wasn't scared. Not anymore, because something strange happened after that post. The comments kept growing, so did the emails, and then the voicemails. Women calling from Austin, from Chicago, from Durban, each one with a story that echoed hers. Fired for leaving early, demoted after maternity leave, told to smile more, speak less, dress tighter, and every voice became an army. One woman even offered to testify. She had a journal from her time at Victor's firm, detailed, dated, painful. "I was 22, she wrote. "He said I had the kind of face that sold houses, and the kind of mind that should stay quiet." Tanisha began building the case. She said it was becoming more than wrongful termination. It was systemic abuse, patterns, cover-ups, manipulation, and it all centered around one man who believed he was untouchable. Renee stood in her office one afternoon, looking at her bulletin board. Client photos, drawings from Ava, a sticky note that read, "You did not come this far to quit." She thought about removing the original flyer, the one that got ripped, but instead, she printed a new one, bigger, bolder. In red letters it read, "We speak, we rise, we build together." She placed it on the window and smiled. But the fight wasn't over, because that evening, as she checked her mail, she found something strange. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded note, slipped under her door. 6 words, written in thick black ink. "You think this is over, Renee?" There was no signature, but the threat was clear. And the next morning, she woke up to police cars outside. Someone had broken into her office and spray-painted the walls with a single word: liar. She stood in the doorway of her small office. Police tape fluttered in the Texas wind. Her front window shattered, her bulletin board ripped down, and the word liar sprayed across the wall in thick red paint. Liar. That's what they wanted her to feel. Like the truth didn't belong to her. Like her fight for dignity was a performance. Like her daughter's needs, her own survival, were just excuses. But Renee didn't look away. She stepped inside, carefully, glass crunching under her shoes. The crayons in Ava's play corner had been scattered, the toy basket upturned, and right there, on her desk, the flash drive was gone, stolen. She sank into her chair, hands trembling. Not from fear, but from fury. They hadn't just come to vandalize, they came to erase, to destroy proof, to send a message. "You're getting too loud." But she had backups. Tanisha had copies. So did Marta. What Victor didn't understand was that truth multiplies. It echoes in whispers. It lives in inboxes and memories, and it never stays buried for long. Still, Renee had to close the office for the week. Ava kept asking, "When can we go back?" And Renee would just pull her close and say, "Soon, baby, soon." The next day, reporters started calling. Not tabloids, not gossip blogs, real journalists. They'd seen her post, heard about the break-in. One even drove from Dallas. A young woman named Amelia, barely out of grad school, but she had that fire in her eyes. "This story matters," she said, "not just because it's about abuse of power, but because it's about the silence we've all accepted." Renee agreed to speak. Carefully. No names, just patterns, experiences. The pressure of being a mother with a career. The constant weight of being told she wasn't enough. The clip aired 3 days later, and something changed. People started showing up, not to threaten, to help. A cleaning crew offered to restore her office, free of charge. A local artist painted a mural over the spray paint. It was a door, a massive door, painted open, sunlight pouring through. And above it, in gold letters, "No lie can close what truth unlocks." Renee stood in front of that mural and cried, not because she was broken, but because she realized she was no longer alone. But just as the dust began to settle, Tanisha called, her voice tight, urgent. "You need to come to my office." "Why?" "There's been a development. About Lena." Renee's stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" There was a pause. Then, "She's gone." Gone. That word hit Renee like a train. "Gone?" she asked again, breath caught in her throat. Tanisha nodded slowly. "She left the state. No forwarding address. Phone disconnected. Bank accounts closed." Renee sat down hard. Everything in her mind started spinning. "She was scared," Tanisha said. "But she left you something." From a drawer, she pulled out a yellow envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter. No greeting, no signature, just 4 pages of heartbreak. Lena had written everything. From the day she overheard Victor call Renee dead weight, to the afternoon he threatened her job if she spoke out. He said he had friends in the commission, that he could make a phone call and ruin any license in 30 minutes flat. She described the pressure, the fear, the guilt of watching Renee get erased, and the shame of helping him, even silently. "I know what I did," Lena wrote, "and I know you may never forgive me, but I couldn't leave without telling you the full truth." She had included one more audio file, one Renee hadn't heard. Tanisha opened her laptop, played it. Victor's voice, colder than before. "She thinks she can fight back? Please, give her a few months. She'll drown in legal fees. Her little single mom with a heart act only goes so far." A pause, then laughter. Another man's voice joined in. Not Victor, someone else, older, more polished. He said, "Don't worry, the commission's in our pocket. Let her bark." Renee's blood froze. Tanisha stopped the audio. "Do you know who that second voice is?" Renee shook her head. Tanisha pulled up a website, clicked on a board member's profile. Real Estate Licensing Commission. His face was right there, the same voice, the same smirk, the same name that signed the letter threatening her license weeks ago. She whispered, "They're all connected." Tanisha nodded. "We're not dealing with one man, Renee. We're dealing with a network. Gatekeepers who've been keeping women out for years." Renee didn't cry. She asked one question. "What's our next move?" Tanisha smiled. "We go federal." And that night, Renee opened a new tab on her laptop, wrote a new post, shorter this time, just a sentence. "If you've ever been told to be quiet, now's the time to speak." And at the bottom, a private inbox. Confidential, safe. By morning, there were 72 messages, and one in particular, and from a woman who said, "I used to work for the board, and I know where the bodies are buried." Her name was Sandra Fields. No relation to Darren. Just a woman with tired eyes, sharp memory, and 2 locked file cabinets in her garage. She'd worked for the Real Estate Licensing Commission for 12 years, handled paperwork, sat in meetings, typed memos for men who never learned her last name. And then one day, she filed a complaint, said her supervisor ignored 3 separate reports about misconduct inside a Houston firm. The complaint vanished. So did her access to internal emails. 3 months later, she was downsized. The same story, different woman. Now she was retired, but not quiet. She'd seen Renee's post, heard the recording, and when she read that Victor's voice had been caught on tape alongside her former boss, she reached out. "I kept copies," she told Renee. "Everything they thought they deleted, I printed and brought home. Something told me the day would come." She handed Tanisha a folder. Inside were emails, memos, internal communications, names, dates, even a spreadsheet. One column titled High-Risk Agents, another Family Status. Under Renee's name, someone had typed Single Mother, Special Needs Child, Potential Liability. That's when Tanisha looked up. "This isn't just unethical," she said. "It's discrimination." Sandra nodded. They had a code for everything. They'd flag agents who took too many days off for medical appointments. Women with young children were ranked low priority for big listings. They never said it outright, but we all knew. She paused. "They didn't want women like you representing their brand." Renee felt the heat rise behind her eyes. Not just anger, grief. All those years she thought she just wasn't enough, when really, she was too much for a system built to exclude her. Too real, too messy, too unwilling to pretend her daughter didn't need her. Tanisha gathered the documents, said they now had grounds for civil action, not just against Victor, but the firm, the commission, the men who smiled for press releases while pulling strings in shadows. This could go public, she said, news outlets, legal exposés, state review boards. But Renee wasn't thinking about headlines. She was thinking about Ava. How she once asked, "Mama, why do people think you're wrong when you're just helping me?" Now she had an answer. Because people fear what they don't understand, and they try to control what they can't define. But the moment Sandra stepped forward, everything changed, because buried truths don't stay buried forever. Sometimes they rise up with names and timestamps, and witnesses who say, "I was there." But before the case could be filed, Renee got another call, this one from Darren. His voice was shaking. "Ava's school just called," he said. "Something happened." Renee dropped everything, jumped in the car, prayed the entire way there. When she arrived, the principal was waiting. Ava was okay, but someone had tried to follow her during recess, a man in a dark SUV. Security intervened before he got close, but still, he had Ava's name. Renee sank into a chair. The principal put a hand on her shoulder. "We've increased security, but we wanted you to know. The police think it might be connected to your legal case." Renee nodded slowly, because deep down, she already knew. This wasn't just retaliation, it was desperation. Because when power starts to crack, it lashes out, and sometimes it aims for the one thing you love most. 2 weeks later, Renee stood before the courthouse. Grey sky above, camera crews to the left, reporters to the right. She didn't flinch. Tanisha walked beside her, file in hand. This was no longer just a complaint. It was a lawsuit. Wrongful termination, discrimination based on family status, retaliation, endangerment. But it wasn't just about Renee. It was about every woman who'd walked through those glass doors and been told her story didn't fit the script. Inside the courtroom, Victor sat stiff in his suit, still smug, but quieter now. His lawyer whispered in his ear. He nodded, eyes never meeting Renee's. She took the stand, spoke clearly, not like someone trying to win, but like someone tired of pretending. She told them about Ava, about that Friday she left work, about the silent punishment that came next, about the badge that didn't work, and the door that never opened again. Then Marta testified. So did Sandra. Then 3 more women, each one a different chapter of the same book. By the time the judge recessed for lunch, Victor wasn't smiling anymore, but Renee wasn't thinking about him. She was thinking about Ava, who sat quietly in the back row with her headphones on and a sketch pad in her lap. During the break, Renee sat beside her. "What are you drawing, baby?" Ava turned the pad around. It was a door, with a bright yellow key in the lock. Underneath, in careful letters, "Mommy opens doors for people." Renee pressed her lips together to hold in the tears, because that's all she'd ever tried to do. Not win, not rise, just open a door for her daughter, for herself, for women told to sit still and be grateful. And now, that door was wide open, but just before the hearing resumed, Tanisha leaned in. "Just got word. They're offering a settlement." Renee looked at her. "How much?" Tanisha told her the number. It was high. High enough to pay rent for years, high enough to walk away. "But it comes with an NDA, Tanisha said. "Silence. You take the money, the story disappears." Renee looked down at Ava's drawing, then back at the courtroom door, and shook her head. "Let's finish this, because justice isn't about the money, it's about the truth being heard." And when the judge spoke her verdict, something happened that made Renee fall to her knees. The courtroom was silent, no papers rustling, no heels clicking, just the slow, steady voice of the judge. "This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Renee Collins." Words that felt like wind under her ribs. She didn't shout, didn't cheer. She closed her eyes and exhaled. Not because she won, but because the weight finally let go. The judgment was clear. Her termination, unlawful. The commission's behavior, biased and retaliatory. Victor Brandt, held liable for personal misconduct and intimidation. He sat still as stone, jaw tight, face pale. But Renee didn't look at him. She looked at Ava. Her daughter stood up, quiet, brave, held out the drawing again, this time with one new detail. The door wasn't just open. It had a welcome mat. It said, "Home." Tanisha squeezed Renee's hand. Outside, the cameras rolled, but Renee didn't give a press statement. She didn't pose. She just walked down those steps like a woman who had done the hardest thing. She stood when the world tried to fold her. Later that week, she reopened her office. Fresh coat of paint, new window, and on the front door, a sign. Not fancy, just 4 words. "Keys without doors, open." It didn't take long before women started walking in, some to buy homes, some to sell. Most just to talk. They came with kids, with divorce papers, with eviction notices. They came tired, ashamed, angry, and Renee welcomed them all because she remembered what it felt like to stand in front of a locked door, holding a heart full of reasons and no key to turn. "Victor?" He disappeared. Word spread fast. His firm folded, his license revoked, not because Renee sought revenge, but because the truth has a way of catching up, even when the system runs. Ava? She thrived. New school. More support. Laughter returning in little waves. One night, as Renee tucked her in, Ava asked, "Does this mean you're a hero now?" Renee smiled. No, baby, I'm just a mom who didn't sit down, because that's what the world still doesn't understand. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through cracked voices in courtrooms. Sometimes it hums in the hands of women rebuilding what others tried to erase. And sometimes it walks into a room in tired shoes and leaves with keys no one ever thought she could hold. Renee thought she worked for a man who had all the power, all the doors, all the rules. But in the end, he needed her name to climb, and she didn't need his to rise, because she didn't just survive him. She made sure no one else had to. And the best part? She did it without becoming like him. If this story reminded you of your own, let me say something to you right now. In the voice of a man who's seen what the world tries to hide, Mr. Solomon, if this story reminded you of your own, leave your truth in the comments. Let it breathe, because sometimes, my dear, the door ain't locked. You just need the right key, and the courage to turn it will be right here and waiting for the next woman ready to walk through.